Editor at The Big Issue, that's Paul McNamee, and political correspondent at The Sun, Martina Bett. We've been talking about food in the break, and we were talking about haggis again. And you had an interesting recipe, didn't you? You were telling me a little bit about haggis pakora.
You say that as if I can create it. I'm sure
you can. I'm sure you can.
It is something that I like to eat. It is lightly battered haggis.
Oh, he's teasing me now.
Haggis pakora. It is a delicacy that everybody should try.
I want to somehow hunt it down after this show.
Okay.
Right,
Breakfast.
Martina, take us to the Times. Defence review, unlikely, because obviously, where's the money going to come from?
Exactly. So we know that there's this big defence review that the Labour government announced straight after coming into power. Sir Keir Starmer has committed to 2.5% of GDP in defence spending, but he said we're not going to show you how we're going to get there until we get this defence review done. Now, there's lots of details coming through, and this is one of them, and the fact that the size of the army is unlikely to increase.
So no more troops.
No more troops, which is incredibly concerning. There's cited the head of the army, General Sir Rowley Walker, and the head of the Navy, Sir Ben Key, and they both say, well, let's just focus on retention and recruitment rather than increasing army sizes. And it kind of shows such resignation, just shows you, and it highlights like the financial implication, you know, how bad things are economically, because everyone wants more troops. We should have more troops, given what's happening around the world, but it's very unlikely to happen.
And we've heard from our favourite guy to talk about on the TV, Donald Trump, President-elect, who has called on NATO to really raise their game in terms of spending and up to potentially 5%. Yeah,
I mean, Labour have committed to get towards 2.5% of GDP, which is quite a leap anyway. But the other side of it is the troop numbers, because the army, the current standing army in Britain, 71,300, but only 55,000 can serve without medical restrictions. I think that is at heart of this. If they cannot recruit, if in the past Britain went into housing estates where they gave going into the army as a career choice, particularly for working class boys who didn't, mostly boys, right, who didn't have another career route, why would they want to go into that? What is the temptation now to go into the army? And I think that's more at heart of the issue here. Who wants to join the army? What is it for?
Yeah.
What do they get out of it?
Yeah, a spokesman for the government saying, actually, there's this changing threat in the world and they want to commit to more money, but how much of that they'll be able to do, we will see. Paul, take us to the front page of The Eye, because train drivers, they're not happy with their current pay. Yeah,
I think this will annoy quite a few people. This comes, it's an interview with the ASLEF leader, the Mick Whelan. ASLEF look after train drivers. As we know, there were many problems with train drivers and their pay over the last number of years. When Labour came in, they settled the dispute. They gave train drivers an effective 15% rise. That went from, some of that was backdated, and there was a pay increase in last year, and also it's coming in next year. 4.5%. Mick Whelan is saying, well, hold on a wee minute. Is that enough? Maybe we will try for a little more. Given everything that we've been talking about, we talked earlier about crumbling hospitals, which there's just no money to fix them. That is something that needs done. And when train drivers who have had a decent settlement, of course everybody would like more, but they've had a decent settlement, and the idea that they're then going to chisel for a little more, I think will set people, will annoy a lot of people.
A step too far, do you think, to ask for more?
Yeah, but hardly surprising. You know, this is going to be a massive headache for Labour, and there were lots of people saying, well, this is exactly what is going to happen after they handed them a 15% pay rise above inflation, and now they want more. And what people have been telling Labour is that the fact they gave train drivers this above inflation pay rise without strings attached, because the previous government was trying to negotiate a deal with train drivers that would would have included reforms of working practices. Some of them are known as Spanish working practices, where, for example, train drivers can restart their lunch break if the boss says hello to them, for example. So there's a string of these practices that are a bit outdated and the previous government wanted to ditch. But instead, we've got a problem with retention and recruitment with train drivers, the same as the army, actually. And that has been completely abandoned. So now they want more money with no strings attached again.
Well, another problem for the government would be education, and this is page 12 of the Times, and it's all about educational reform and how that is being criticised.
Yes, it's Catherine Bilbas Singh. She's a famous...
the strictest head teacher in the world.
Yes.
Some say.
Some say. But she's been very vocal about education reforms, and now the Labour government is bringing forward a schools bill which will basically restrict free academies from setting their own pay and conditions, because at the moment they can do whatever they want to, but when this new bill will be introduced, they will have to follow strict curriculum and pay scales. So the head teacher here basically accuses the education sector of being blinded by Marxist ideology. She accuses her of having caved to the pressure of the unions, of the education unions, because her point is that actually these reforms that were introduced actually under the new Labour government, the Tony Blair, and then were taken forward by Michael Gove, have actually been incredibly successful, because the ability of having freedom and targeting the curriculum or the pay scales for teachers, being able to hire graduates, for instance, because they would no longer be able to do that, has been successful, and that Labour is going to basically put a pause on that progress.
Paul?
I mean, I don't know what blinded by a Marxist ideology means. It just that she throws out these meaningless, trite phrases, thinking, "Oh, I will get some people behind me for this." I think that if the Labour government has a plan to raise everything for everybody, if that is what is behind this, rather than allowing some to move too far ahead at the expense of others, I think that's positive. Of course, it's useful if heads can manage their own budgets and do things in the correct way, in a positive way. But if that means, as this particular head teacher wants, to do things around uniforms, when we know that a lot of people struggle with uniform costs, and that seems to be one of her main bugbears here. I think
she likes the identity that a branded uniform brings.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong, I suppose, in essence, with a uniform. It's just that when it is such a huge cost for people who can't necessarily afford it, and that's the be-all and end-all for particular schools. I think that there's much more going on here, and it seems to me as if this particular head teacher, as she does, is looking for a headline.
OK, we'll leave that there then. This is a brilliant story, isn't it? Julia Donaldson, a favourite in my house, she knocks J.K. Rowling off the top spot for UK's best-selling books. I can't believe that.
For total number of books sold, do you know how many books Julia Donaldson has sold?
Our favourite is Room on the Broom.
Well, that's one.
Well and the Whale. I mean, go on. I can't even put a figure on it.
She has sold, I guess, globally, 48.6 million books.
What?
That's overtaken J.K. Rowling, who sold 48 million.
She's definitely cornered the market, hasn't she, in storytelling, and then her illustrations with, I think it's Axel Stifler.
Yes.
He's brilliant in bringing those stories.
It doesn't say how much he earns here.
I know, it must be a collab. He must get some of the royalties here. But it's a particular mix, isn't it?
It is.
Storytelling, illustration.
Donaldson has written more than 210 books.
Oh, wow.
She is hammering them out. The Gruffalo, everybody knows. Rowling has...
Oh, yes, the Gruffalo's child then as well. I mean, it's limitless what you can read at bedtime when it comes to Julia Donaldson.
Well, there you go.
I know this area.
You're part of the force making her sell more books than anybody else.
Yes.
We'll need a book with Harry Potter versus the Gruffalo.
Well, that would be. Martina, tell us about this last story. Welsh town makes potholes a tourist attraction in 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's a very classic British response, taking something frustrating into something quite funny. And potholes are a big problem in this country. I think it would take 16 billion to bring all roads up to scratch. And this is just a perfect highlight of what's happening to the country. Crumbling.
Thank you both. We'll have to leave it there. More after the break.
we've got your Sunday mornings covered.